2, 1, start it.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of Blitzkreig. In this edition, we're going to be looking at Orc war machines.
Hello everyone, this is Fiaura, and I can't believe they actually asked for orcs. Unless they just want us to be hilarious with it.
Well, Orc tech is surprisingly effective, if very, shall we say, unconventional.
I was gonna go more with, just plain crazy.
Well, there's that too.
I mean, some of these vehicles, I'm like, were you just trying as hard as you can to compensate for something? Is that why you put so many guns on it?
Well, come on, all vehicles need more DACA.
They put more DACA on a Baneblade.
Obviously not enough DACA for them then, was it?
How? Never mind.
Yeah, put a bit more DACA, a nice red paint job, you're good to go.
Apparently.
Yeah. So on that note, we're going to take a look at our first vehicle, which is the Ork Battle Wagon. Now, the Ork Battle Wagon is, in essence, kind of similar to an Ork version of a Land Raider. It's designed to carry a whole mob of Orks, plus any Gretchen, Snotlings, Squigs, and general shiny things that belong to the mob. Typically loud, heavy, and very noisy. Basically, you carry a large variety of weapons, such as cannons, zap guns, lifter-droppers, big shooters, rocket launchers. Like with all Ork technology, there's no set pattern, as with Imperial vehicles, but they generally tend to be around about 5 meters in height, with an estimated weight of 160 tons, and an off-road speed of 60 kilometers per hour.
So, I have a couple pictures of Ork battle wagons, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, oh, it looks like to me this is, so, the inspiration for this to me looks like kind of, Japanese Civil War era boats. Giant floating castles. Well, this is a giant land castle that moves around. The armor's very flat all over, but it's also made in hodgepodge and patchwork. And there's a disadvantage and an advantage to patchwork armor. And all the Ork vehicles are this way. The disadvantage is you don't have that hardened, reinforced, large size plate that someone's trying to punch through. The advantage is it's easy to fix. You just replace the patch that happens to be broken. Or you can literally patch it while you're still moving. Which I don't think would be a terribly wonderful idea, but I would not doubt that an Ork would throw a Snotling out and go, "Fix that!" and expect it to be done.
Well, quite, yes.
Firepower-wise, the one I have here has like 2 battle cannons on the front, and then heavy bolters and heavy stubbers on top, and I'm like, it really does have a lot of firepower. I just don't suspect that all the flat plates everywhere are terribly good at stopping enemy shells.
And that's not even taking into account the fact if Nork believes the armor's going to work, it's going to work.
See, that's the other factor I can't factor in, even with engineering experience and armor knowledge and all that stuff. I can't go, it shouldn't work, but then if the Ork believes it's going to... See, there's this psychic factor that annoys the crap out of me that I'm like, this is wrong! And the Ork's like, nope, works. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Why? Because screw physics.
Yeah, for those of you listening who don't understand what we're talking about, all Orks generate a communal psychic field. Now, this psychic field basically has effects depending on what they believe. So, a vehicle that's painted red will be much faster than a vehicle that's not painted red because all the Orks believe red ones go faster. They believe yellow missiles will create bigger explosions and so forth. And so if an Ork has enough belief that their armor's going to hold, it's going to hold. I mean, there's even that story which you mentioned in the last episode about the Lehman Russ with no engine that still somehow managed to go because they believed the drawing was going to be enough.
So for those who don't know, and looted vehicles are something very common with the Orks. So a looted Lehman Russ kept being knocked out by an Imperial Guard unit, and then showing back up the next day to attack them again. And finally, after 2 weeks of this, they knocked it out and captured it. And said, alright, we gotta know, what is inside this thing that is making it... that we've blown it to bits one time, and it came back, and it was the same Lehman Russ. And the reason they knew it was the same Lehman Russ is because it still had the Imperial identification number on the side of the tank. So they opened up the engine compartment, and inside is an empty compartment with a picture drawn on the wall of an engine that says vroom vroom. And I just went, okay, if that's how it's going to be, Orks, that's how it's going to be. This is the reason you should eat your fungus.
That's what they call Orky know-whats.
I suppose we should get into the next set of vehicles that are on...
Yes, and the next set of vehicles we'll be doing is actually the Ork War Track. Now, War Tracks are basically... they're modified off the War Buggy design. Well, I should say more off the War Bike design. They were typically with a wheel at the front, but with treads on the rear half of it. Now, these come mainly in two varieties. You've got these bog standard one, well, bog standard for Orks, which comes with generally with a big shooter. But it also has a variety called the Scorcher, which is basically a giant mobile flamethrower. Now, because these are half-track vehicles, I would assume these would be quite versatile across all types of terrain.
They're actually extremely versatile, and it's something that the Germans used during World War II. Because it's... I forget the name of it, I have to look it up, but it's a... it's basically the same thing. They use it for quick reconnaissance and to quickly transport one person from point A to point B without having to worry about the terrain. The wheel on the front really just steers the vehicle. Everything else about it, and it's called a Kettenkrad half-track motorcycle. Everything else about it, they just... It doesn't care about the terrain because it's tracked. Now, the thing that this reminds me of is actually in like Somalia and other war-torn countries where you have like a 4x4 truck equipped with a gun in the bed instead of just being used to transport stuff. So you have like a technical, basically. Except for this is a half-track version of a technical. I also imagine it would be rather fast. Simply because, you know, it's basically an engine with a gun on it.
As long as it's painted red, it will go fast.
Ork logic. Because that
Ork
works. Baneblade, paint it red, it does 60 kph. What in the hell?
That sounds absolutely terrifying.
Now, I'm curious. Does the Ork logic work against them? Like, if they're fighting Blood Angels, are the Blood Angels all suddenly faster?
I think it actually does. From what I've found, the Ork win-loss track records tend to be worse against the Ultra Smurfs, Ultramarines to those not in the know. Because to Orks, blue is symbolised as a very lucky colour. That's why the Death Skulls clan pick themselves blue to get themselves more lucky so they can find more loot on the battlefield and have general, better luck. And because they believe the Ultramarines are going to be more lucky, they're actually going to have an advantage over the Orks themselves. But again, no one's ever really accused an Ork of being intelligent. Well, apart from the odd boys. Because, let's be honest, it's engineered into their DNA with actual synthetic DNA strands. Funnily enough.
I will still never believe the Orks to truly be, intelligent so much as just plain crazy.
Well, there's that as well. But you know what they say, there's a fine line between genius and insanity.
I think they looked at that fine line and then went, I'm going to jump 20 feet towards insanity. Are you sure? Oh my god.
Yes. So moving on to the next vehicle is the Ork War Truck. Now, the War Truck is in essence, a big pickup truck, typically armed with big shooters in the front, but they tend to also have huge, like, spiked bull bars at the front, which are ideal for ramming into other vehicles or just mowing down infantry, but just by driving over them. They just they're mainly built for speed, just for getting troops there, and have very little in the way of actual armor. These aren't big APCs like the Imperial Rhinos or the Chimeras. They're just a big pickup truck, essentially.
Not only is it just a big pickup truck, the picture I have actually has this big pickup truck with melee arms.
What?
I'm just going, you're really okay? So, first off, it has absolutely little to no armor protection whatsoever. It's literally like I just got into my pickup truck outside, threw some guys in the back, and put a metal sheet up between the driver's compartment and the bed of the truck, and said, "Okay, there you guys go. That's all you get." But at the same time, this lends to the advantage that the entire squad of orcs with all of the weapons that they could possibly have can shoot, which I think is what they were going for here. And I think the orc idea of getting to melee combat is this. They take the war truck and use it to ram an enemy vehicle and then jump out and kill everyone that comes out of that vehicle. Rinse and repeat until the war truck stops running.
Drive me closer. I want to hit him with my axe.
Yeah! Get me closer. I want to hit him with my chopper. And...
So I have to do the get to the chopper reference. Sorry, has to be done.
I just don't see in an actual armored conflict, I would see these getting knocked out by the dozens, and the orcs probably wouldn't care.
Yeah, because really these vehicles actually, I think, really made their debut with the Gorkamorka game, which was essentially Mad Max with orcs. Let's be honest. Driving alongside each other, ramming into each other. They can be upgraded with boarding planks as well, so they can actually help board other vehicles with ease as well.
Really, you are right though. This really does remind me of like Mad Max with orcs. God, that would be terrifying.
Mad Morg.
That would be a movie I would go see. Mad Max meets the orcs.
On an unrelated note, there was actually a video game of Gorkamorka in production for the Dreamcast, but for whatever reason it got cancelled, which is a shame because I would have loved that.
That could have been fun.
Yes.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Damn you, Games Workshop. Or this case, damn you, Sega.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on. We're going to be moving on to the gun wagon. Now, the gun wagon is an orc vehicle used for transport, but also carries heavy weaponry, such as big shooters, zap guns, cannons, or even quad flat guns, while still retaining its transport capabilities. The closest thing I can think of as a parallel would probably be the Space Marine Razorback. Now, compared to some of the other orc vehicles, we actually do have some tech specs for this one. With an estimated weight of around 32 tons and a maximum speed of about 60 kilometers per hour.
This reminds me of Hellcats and Wolverines. Like, the tank destroyers. Because little to no armor. Pretty much check. Because I think the thickest armor point is actually the front of the tank. The front of this vehicle where the engine is. I'm not going to call it a tank. It's not a tank. And the rest of it really feels like a half-tracked tank destroyer. And I'm like, okay, I could maybe get behind this. But then, there's no standardization with orcs. It's whatever works. So some of these cobbled together have sloped armor. Some of these look like half-track trucks. And then some of these look like, well, half a tank with a car on the front. I don't honestly know. The one tech spec here we have says carries 30 rounds. I'm pretty sure the orcs would find a way to fit more than 30 rounds of ammunition into this thing.
They'll probably just stuff the barrel with snotlings.
Exactly.
Or that, or various squig ammunition, like some face eater squigs or ripper squigs, stuff like that. Very nasty.
Or just shoot squigs at you rigged with explosives and hope they bite onto something hard enough to blow up.
That as well. I suppose that's what the lobber gun's for, though, isn't it? It just launches a jar full of buzzer squigs.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be what it's for. I don't exactly agree with the tactical soundness of shooting my friends at the enemy. But then again, I have been known to pull the proverbial bullshit card, and we were playing a Battletech game and I ran out of Gauss rifle ammo, so I picked up the nearest power armor guy, shoved him in the Gauss rifle, and shot him at a tank.
And how did that turn out?
The tank blew up.
As long as it gets results, that's all that matters.
However, the rest of our power armor troops were not particularly keen on being demoted to ammunition.
The Orks wouldn't mind. I mean, after all, they developed a shock attack gun. They just launch waves upon waves of snotlings at people.
I think we've given Games Workshop an idea.
Space Marine launcher gun.
Space Marine launcher gun.
I bet the Space Wars would use that. They're just like, yeah, launch means the enemy.
See, now I'm imagining this gun on a tabletop in which you have, like, a small vehicle with tracks and a very, very large caliber gun. And then, like, just this line of snotlings behind it. And then on top of this, if it engages in melee, anyone who it, quote-unquote, runs down suddenly gets added to the ammunition pile of snotlings and shot out of the cannon.
Again, if it works, it works.
The orcs. You make my brain hurt. Not in a bad way.
Anything else to say about the gun wagon before we move on?
No. Battle Fortress, please.
Okay, so Battle Fortress is generally much larger than battle wagons. They can be used by the really rich and powerful orcs in their society, so mainly in particular by the Bad Moons clan. Now, these come in a few variants. You have the Skullhammer variant, which is a variant made from the remains of Baneblade tanks. Now, it generally has a supercharged triple overpressure turbo engine that makes up most of the hull. Now, which obviously allows it to move with blinding speed for a vehicle of its size. And it generally has a Skullhammer cannon. You also have the Death Roller Fortress, which is armed with a massive, what's called a Death Roller at the front, which is basically a huge steamroller attachment covered in spikes. Now, what you do with that, you just drive into the enemy and just squash them. You've also got the Rocket Splitter variant, which is little more than a tractor platform armed with an obscenely huge array of rockets crammed dangerously together like a fireworks display. And then finally you've got the Flak Fortress, which is mainly anti-aircraft in its role.
Okay. So for a start, I mentioned this jokingly earlier. I didn't think they'd actually do it. A Baneblade moving at 65 kilometers an hour.
Vroom vroom.
This reminds me very much of a T-72 and the fact that a T-72 goes very fast in one direction. As soon as you start to turn a T-72, however, you lose about 30 kilometers an hour instantly. Now, I'm not going to say the orcs are terribly smart. But in this case, they have covered the primary weak point of the Baneblade on every one of these I've seen with a steel reinforcement and a bunch of steel spikes painted as white teeth. Right there on the front of the grill. Right there on the lower glacis of the hull, where on the Baneblade that's a flat plate. Well, now they've just given it about 30, 40 more millimeters of extra armor. Plus, since most rounds that hit tanks usually hit on their upper glacis, there's those spiked, those white chunks of steel painted like teeth. If a shape charge round hits that, it's going to explode on that and then just cascade over the armor and not actually be able to penetrate anything. Then on top of this, they've added all of these extra plates all over it. And I'm like, I particularly like my applique armor from time to time. But even this is getting into the realm of silly. Not to mention that they've added extra turrets to the side for, I don't know, spite purposes. How they fit all of this into a Baneblade, I don't know. Because as you just said, most of the room inside is taken up by this stupid-sized engine. But they fit all of this into a Baneblade.
Maybe they're drawings.
Maybe half of the interior just has an engine drawn all over it.
Or maybe the turrets just have a little thing on top of saying "bang bang." I don't know.
Therefore, they don't need ammo.
Exactly.
Or
they just wrote unlimited DACA.
Unlimited DACA. I don't think that the concept of unlimited has actually reached the Orks yet, and if it does, we're all screwed. I will, however, say that I'm guessing since this is a salvage Baneblade, there have actually been holes already blown in its main armor. So some of these extra plates added on are likely covering those holes.
More than likely, yes.
So the obvious thing to do would be to shoot at the extra little plates that have been added on to see if there's actually a hole underneath or not. And if there is, well, you probably just penetrated and killed something. The Death Roller, I can't imagine, is super effective. And here's why. I could see it getting people who are pinned down and not willing to run away. I could see it getting people who aren't paying attention. But unless this thing is doing like 120, 130 kilometers an hour, I think we're going to see it coming and have the common sense to relocate before it gets there. Unless we have no choice but to stand our ground. So I'm not quite sure how effective this really is.
I just have this mental image when Orks are driving the Death Roll, they're singing that song "I Got a Brand New Combine Harvester."
I could see Larry the Cable Guy as an orc. God, that's a terrifying image. And now someone has just got the idea to make the orc war boss Larry the Cable Guy.
I was thinking more of the words with myself, but that's a different story.
I can, however, see this thing being somewhat effective against other tanks, because just the sheer number of things you have to knock out on it to kill it. You obviously have the driver slits on front, which the Orks aren't like us, where we put, like, plastisteel, reinforced glass, or any of that stuff. No, it's just an open slit. So that easy to kill the driver, and then you've got these weapon mounts all over it still that are still going to keep shooting at you. And knowing the Orks, you could probably set this thing on fire, destroy the engine, the ammunition about to be cooked off, and the driver's dead, and they would still be sitting there shooting at you. And I'm like, do they understand the concept bail out? Or is there no sense of self-preservation here? But the twin lasguns and the battle cannon on top are probably what make this vehicle effective. It's more like going, as you put it, it's more like the battle wagon's more like going up against a Land Raider. Well, this is more like going up against a Land Raider with extra guns. The rocket Spitta, I'm expecting for it to explode as soon as it's hit. I have one picture of it. It's kind of small, but as soon as I start looking at all of the different, I'm like, that's a lot of explosives that are just out in the open. unless you're really long range, that's not going to turn out well for anyone. Then again, the Orks might believe that they don't explode until they launch, and therefore they're fine. And I'm completely wrong. Goddamn Ork beliefs. Why do you have to have real world effects?
Because reasons.
Good enough.
This is the same reason how Marneus Calgar was able to be literally torn limb from limb, have his eye ripped off, all his arms and legs ripped off, and still survive. Because Matt Ward gave him super... Well, it wasn't Matt Ward, but yeah, let's just blame Matt Ward anyway.
Fair enough.
On an unrelated note, my next special will be about Robin Cruddas, so stay tuned for that.